yeah, to see how this all grows. We started the development 12 years ago, and currently we have so much interest coming from so many different countries. It's really impressive to see that. So thank you all for coming. I have a 15-minute time gap to fill with my presentation. That will be a little bit close, but we are late anyway. So this is my agenda that I wanted to show to you, what I wanted to speak about. First, a quick introduction of myself, and then I will go directly to the topic of what is Goobi at all, because I guess there are several users that never even saw the application, so I try to spend not more than 3 minutes about Goobi, because afterwards all other presentations are based on that information, I guess. And then I will give an overview of what we developed over the last 1.5 years, because this was the last meeting here in the UK. So I show a little bit the news, just the highlights, and afterwards show the roadmap, what's coming next, what we think, what we expect, etc. So quickly, an introduction. I will not spend a lot of time on that topic. As I said before, I'm Steffen. I'm coming from Intranda. It's a software company. We're sitting in Germany, in Göttingen. It's a university city with a big university library. Actually, this is where it all started. Currently, we have a team of 11 members. Not all of these are developers, but most of these are very technical guys. All grew over the time, and we noticed when we counted this for this presentation that we currently support about 70 customers in 10 countries. Not all of them use Goobi. These are just 50 or something, but that's more or less what we do. And as you see here on the map, it's we're flying quite a lot. We are a software company, but that doesn't mean we do just software. We do a lot more. We try to build a community. That's really hard work to do that. We invite people to events. We did quite the same as we have here 2 months ago in Germany with 60 attendees. Jessica was there too. It looks like you see on the photo. Beside that, we try to record videos of presentations and put all the presentations online, all our documentation online, screencasts or how-to tutorials. So you find more about that there, but I don't want to speak too much about it. So let's jump into the topic of what it's all about, Goobi. What is it? If you never saw it, you probably have no idea, and you come up with the expectation that digitization might not be that difficult. It's just that you put some physical objects, you put it on these shiny scanners, and at the end you have all the stuff online. That's actually how I see how the hardware vendors see it, or how they sell it. But the real world behind that is a lot more difficult. And the Goobi way that we invented 12 years ago is to cut this workflow into smaller steps, like a stair. So you do one step after another, small things that people can do, that they can reach in a given range of time, and afterwards another workflow steps come. And this is the magic behind it. Everything goes in a specific order, and if you imagine you have something like this video that you want to digitize, then you would have specific workflow steps which are needed for these physical objects to transform them into digital. If you have other materials, then these might need complete different workflow steps, different needings. And the magic that Goobi does is coordinate all this to do different workflows there, different workflows for other material, bring this all together in a consistent way. That's what it's all about. And bringing objects online is not what Goobi does entirely. Goobi focuses on the workflow to pass the result then over to some other system, and this other system then cares about having it online accessible. So what I will speak about today is the workflow, organizing the people, the projects, the objects, etc. This is what I will focus on. As you might guess or you heard about, it's quite a lot of use cases out there. You just saw the different materials, the different needings, the different workflow steps, tools that have to be included in workflows. Some of the work is manual, some is automatic. typical things that have to go on are conversion tasks, image and video conversion, or image conversion, or archiving, QA, a lot more. We will speak about that later on, maybe. And the Goobi way to do it, or this complexity, to hide this behind a shiny web interface. So at the end, for a user, it should be as easy as possible to work with this complex topic behind. To have a very easy interface for users. They work with it like a to-do list, a task list, where they accept something and they finish something, and everything else is hidden for them. But for persons that have more access, more rights in the system, they have the full picture, the overview of the progress of individual items, etc. And as the needings of, or the requirements in the different institutions are that different between each other, we invented some years ago the concept of doing it all plugin based. And this is, I guess, one of the key to success of Goobi, to develop specific needings in a plugin so that it can be installed in one institution even if others don't need it or don't want that feature. A good sample is, for example, a statistic that is needed very specifically in one institution and others are not allowed such kind of reporting of statistics. So that's one of the things, the key concept of Goobi, to have functionality as plugins and enrich it in a way that it's useful for one institution exactly as they need it. So, as you heard, maybe, we developed quite a lot of functionality in the past. Last time in Southampton, we had a user meeting in June last year, I would say. May or June. And what I announced there was the new web interface of Goobi. We developed it. It looks more as you see it now. Formerly it was a little bit outdated, I would say. And this new interface was very good accepted. We were surprised a little bit how many institutions switched to the new user interface. There's only a list of 3 users which are still working on the old user interface, but the new one is the one that everybody uses. And yeah, now we focus more on extending the usability or efficiency of the software. One of the things that, for example, the Welcome Library loves to see is that workflows and projects, for example, can now be cloned. In the past, you've set up such a workflow, and if you did something wrong, then several objects or several things are wrong configured, and it just cost too much time. And now, by cloning workflows, cloning projects, you save a lot of such work. That makes it easier and more efficient. You probably remember I announced statistics the last time as plugins because we had needings from Jerusalem, from National Library of Israel. They wanted a very specific statistic, user-based, to see the throughput of individual persons, something that would not be allowed in other countries or other institutions. That was the idea behind doing the statistics in a plug-in way so that one institution can have functionality that others don't have with following the law in each country. And the thing that we noticed is that such statistics shouldn't be visible for everybody. So statistics can now have different access rights. What you see here, for example, is a statistic that you can access and one that you're forbidden to see. And that's why you have no access. And there are first implementations that use it to have individual statistics. Small adaptation, but with a big effect. This goes again in the direction of the Welcome Library. You probably know from, one of my 3 German screenshots. You import quite a lot in the Welcome Library. Welcome Library is doing huge projects. And one of those things is that they import lots of data using different ways into the system. And one of those ways is the mass import way. And we added there a progress bar. Doesn't seem to be much as you see it here, but it has a huge effect for the user as then he sees what happens and that something happens. Formerly in previous versions, he just had to wait until something changed, hopefully, or a timeout came up. So that is more user-friendly. I'm personally a big fan of the dashboard idea that I announced last year. I know Jan is not a big fan of that. I like it, and I extended, especially for Dave from the Wacom library again, sorry, the possibility to integrate other systems into the dashboard. So when you enter Goobi the first time, you see directly what's going on, which systems are up and running or where are problems. Dave, for example, loved to see the task manager included, all the jobs, all the queues. For example, OCR is going, is working, or something stopped or some problems. Then the icons become red here, for example. Or the monitoring to see if the storage is, end of storage, or I don't know, CPU is under high load, such things. Then something, big effect, small development. You probably had a situation in the past that you wrote a long email, you didn't send it, you closed the program and all you wrote was gone, or you worked in a Word file and at the end something breaks and you don't have a backup and all the work is gone forever. And that is pretty annoying, and we had quite the same situation in the METS editor, the metadata editor of Goobi, where you index metadata, structured data, pagination, a lot of stuff that most of the institutions do. But if someone calls you on the phone or you go to lunch and you come back, then a browser timeout may result in not having saved what you had. And that's why we extended Goobi to do automatically a backup while you're working on, or even if you stop working. So if you come back and the system is down, or sometimes computers restarted, things happen, then Goobi tells you, hey, you had an unsaved copy there, should I use that to move on and work or no? And that saves a lot of energy. As said before, metadata enrichment is a big topic for most of the institutions. There are developments that we do to have a better efficiency mostly, to be faster to index stuff, because most of the libraries or institutions that work with the digitized content, they look into the content and index what's inside and not just what's written outside on the book or on the item. And one of the things that helped us to guarantee the quality of the metadata was that we enriched the possibility to validate more of the content that users add. There are now configurable regular expressions. You probably don't see it very good. These are validation warnings that tell the user that, for example, in this field here, there should be a 2-letter language code and not a 3-letter language code. Doesn't sound like a big difference, but makes a big difference in terms of compatibility with other systems or with metadata standards. And this is highly configurable and guarantees data quality, for example. There's still quite new, the thumbnail view in the METS editor that saves a huge amount of time, as you can see the whole book or the whole image set while you're indexing. If you hover over such an image, it becomes bigger. You can even read the text, so it's really fast now working with that. Beside that, Ryanach asked me some months ago, I don't know if you remember, if it's possible to show the number of images which are contained in that object, and I built exactly this for you, Ryanach. And I don't know if Emma is here from the Botlane library. Oh, hi, you're Emma. You asked for the pagination extension here. You wanted a prefix or a suffix, one of those, and I decided to do both, so that now you can have even more pagination styles, like you see it here, that you can put anything around a counter that's counting the pages. I hope that helped you. You have it installed? Sorry? You have it installed already?
Yeah, that's great, thank you.
The image here on the right side that you see while you're indexing It currently allows a very deep zoom. You can zoom in very, very deep. Actually, it's based on IIIF, just as a small preview. What's coming later. And these items that you see here, the metadata fields, were configurable already in the past. So we had different types of fields like drop-downs or big text areas or small read-only fields like this one here. But now all these fields became individual plugins again. And this allows us to define even more ways to index metadata while you do all the work. For example, such plugins can bring their own user interface again to communicate with other systems. What you see here is my second German screenshot. Communication with a central authority database to pull person information from outside. Instead of typing first name, last name, we pull that information based on a search in an authority file and get identifier and the most common written form into the metadata. That guarantees a better quality, and the same with geonames for locations. So that is one of the benefits of having this plugin available. Beside that, there's a new area that's called administration plugins for developments which are independent of workflow or workflow status. For example, the Welcome Library needed a way to delete objects in their online presentation, but directly out of Goobi, so they just hit the button and delete an object in another system. So there's communication with other systems in the background, or even more development that allows specific data retrievement, as again here this sample from the Welcome Library to see what's going on, which access license have all our objects online, etc. So there's a lot of room for these developments as they are based on plugins. You probably, hopefully, remember that Goobi had or has a web API that allowed users or machines to communicate with Goobi from outside. We enriched it now with a REST API, very technical, I know, but that is, you will love it later on when you see it in work, because this new interface, the new REST API allows the communication using standards based on XML or JSON to let other systems communicate with Goobi. And I had a free weekend and I developed, based on WordPress, probably heard about WordPress, a content management system, a complete different other application written in another programming language, and I developed digitization on demand application in WordPress that communicates with Goobi just to try it out if it works, to order a digitization job, to get the result at the end, to see if my order job is running, where in the status is it, and yeah, it works. It was great to see that, and as we probably know all, WordPress, a very flexible content management system, allows to include other plugins like payment plugins for PayPal or something. So a complete digitization on demand system based on WordPress was developed in 2 or 3 days. So that makes use of this REST API to communicate with the system. So just to open your mind what could be possible to communicate with other systems. Beside that, we had a lot of different projects going on in the last 1.5 years. One of the things were the very difficult art material that we have in Zurich, in Switzerland. The first institution where we had to work with RDA catalogued material that costed quite a lot of energy to map the data fields, and the content that we processed there is it brought a lot of difficulties, like OCR should be done, but the content is bad readable, or they index so much information, it has to be efficient, etc., etc. Besides that, we still struggle a little bit when we come to Hebrew material. It sounds easy, as the books are just you have to read them from the back side, right to left instead of left to right. Sounds easy, but brings a lot of difficulties in the technical level. as page flipping or such things, or even reading stuff is completely different. Besides that, you see here we have to ingest the stuff into a Rosetta, a long-term archive there in Israel, but it works. So they do more and more of these projects in Israel with their archival material there, so that seems to run quite good. This is something where I don't say too much about it. This is the so-called grassroots. Jeff will speak later about that. We have a very interesting project in Rwanda. I won't say too much about that, but this is probably a picture that he won't show to you. But this is what he means later on. Yeah, and in April we had the chance to give a presentation in the National Archives in Washington. That was a huge thing, and one of the things we announced there was a Goobi2Go, because we came up with the idea of making Goobi as easy, installable as possible for everybody out there without even communicating with us. So we have the documentation online, we have the system auto-installable, so please use it all and stop trying to work with Word files or Excel files to organize your workflow. And that's the reason why we put everything into a virtual machine, self-installable on any platform, and we get feedback from a lot of companies now that start working with it. So where's the road going? I hope I'm still in the time. We noticed that the way to develop our functionality as plugins was the right decision some years ago. We get more and more individual requirements that we can develop as plugin and put it into the workflow without disturbing others that don't want this functionality. That seems to run quite good. We focus currently more on communicating with other systems by ingesting stuff, for example, into other repositories. We have an ingest into Preservica up and running in the Welcome Library since, I don't know, 5 years. Rosetta is working since, I don't know, 2 years. Quite new is the ingest into MyCore, and what we focus now on is the ingest into Fedora. That's a live screenshot of what we have currently. We're still not 100% satisfied with it, but it's working. So Goobi can ingest into Fedora, and that will be one of the next parts that we put onto the Goobi2Go machine. Yeah, besides that, we will develop specific needings. For example, that's a mock-up that I just created 2 weeks ago for another customer in Germany, for my fourth screenshot in German, to extend the so-called process log here. Imagine it would be English. To be more intelligent, to filter there, to create versions of content that you have there, to restore, to come back to previous versions. And beside that, we will see what's coming there. We are currently in contact with Stanford. They just started to use Goobi, and the first project that they created got the name 3D Bones. I'm very surprised to see that. Let's see what they want to digitize. But we have several customers that ask currently for 3D objects. So I guess this will be one of the next big things. Besides that, the metadata world is always changing and always more complex than you might expect. So I guess there will be more that we do. And we will focus then on growing our Goobi2Go package and include Fedora there. For example, for the Rwanda project. So that's more or less what I wanted to say. That's the content that Goobi covers, the workflow. Bless you. So what you've seen is what Goobi as workflow tool does. It's a lot more complex. I could speak for hours about it. I just showed you how content comes from one system, gets somehow enriched, adapted, and exported to something else. And this something else is possibly something that Jan is going to speak about. So if you have questions, we have no time, so please, please don't ask. That's it. Are there questions, or should we go on?